once more to Marilyn Hawes. And, well, listen, every now and again we mention what she does. And she's head of this charitable body, which is about abuse. And that's why we talk a lot about abuse. She's given her life over to this, and she's won Woman of the Year a few years ago. There you go. That's when they knew what a woman was. It could be anything of the year now, could it not? But the problem goes on, doesn't it, Marilyn? Because
it never stops. It will always go on, but it can be curtailed if people understood what they were looking at in plain sight.
Yes, I'm going to mention a couple of miscreants now. One is Edward Finn, an anaesthetist that is in the East Midlands, I think it is. And for years he's been a naughty chap. And that doesn't say much to the real gravity of a situation when a patient is in a particularly vulnerable position in lots of ways. And there he is. He's been found with 4,000 terrible photographs on computers and iPads. People have been cruelly treated by him, even younger than teenage girls. These people are something else. It's a moot point whether anything can be done about them. Of course, he's been sent down for a good jail sentence.
Well, not really a good one. He's only got 8 years.
Well, yes, but he's also got something on top, hasn't he?
Oh, he's got a lot of restrictions going forward. That is true. He's banned for life from this and banned for life from that. He won't obviously work in the NHS again. He was only in his early 30s, but he won't do the 8 years. You and I know that. But what annoys me is there should be, I believe, when you are in a position of trust, there should be an extra lump on top of your sentence, because that betrayal is horrific on the staff that he worked with. And it was for me, very telling when one of the mothers said, he was called a predatory paedophile. So predatory paedophile means he really has got a really bad habit of it, you know. But when a mother said, my daughter, I'll just get this right, it's awful to feel my daughter was entrusted to the hands of a paedophile. I absolutely know what that feels like. I've been there. And that's the words that I used at the time. I said, I didn't realize I had gift wrapped my children to be entrusted to the hands of a head teacher abuser, yeah, as in my case. So I know the fallout from this for the people he worked with will be horrific. And that causes real trauma. The whole of the staff that he worked with will be traumatized for what they missed. Now, NHS has come out and said we have robust safeguarding. Well, that's all well and good, but that depends on only as good as the people that adhere to it. Now, they've said in that article that we always allow people to have a chaperone with them. Well, I think that should be mandatory when it's under 18 years of age, because there was a case, you may remember, Rodney, many years ago now, of Miles Bradbury. And he was an oncologist, and he was a pediatric oncologist. And parents would say, oh, can we come in? Can we have a chaperone? And then a chaperone would be like a nurse would be appointed. And he would say to the nurse, oh, you're not needed, go away. I mean, and what rookie nurse is going to stand up to someone like that? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So, and I've used that as a question on the panel that I do with nurses that I actually interview. What would you do in this situation? This is a true life case study. Now, with this case, he would have taken film and photograph very often, like Miles Bradbury. I bet he had a camera in his pen, so that when you go in there, and it would be harder to do that because he must have touched kids and filmed it. Some of the children were literally 12 months old. Now, 4,000 images, right? Aged 12 months to 14, 179 were the most serious. Now, that's category A. Category A is bestiality, rape, even of a 12-month-old, sadism, brutality and bondage, and snuff videos. Now, snuff videos, as you know, but for the listening public, are where a child is raped and murdered for the gratification of some creep. So these are significant. But when you then look at the statistics of different sexual abuses, because if you think of the abused are always vulnerable or in a vulnerable position, well, everyone in a hospital is, aren't they?
Yes.
You've got tubes and bits hanging out of you. You can't move. You're ill, probably half comatose. So you're not in the best place. But of the stats, I haven't got anything since 2022, but 2019 till 2022 saw 6,500 rapes and sexual assaults in hospitals. That was across 212 NHS trusts and 37 police forces. 35,000 cases, 35,000 were cases of sexual misconduct, and 180 cases were rape of a child under 4. Now, that is outrageous. Now, I have been in hospitals before now where I've gone in, one particular hospital stands out, it was in Surrey, and there was no one on the front desk. I was walking down the corridors. No one said, can I help you? I could have gone into any ward, touched someone. It doesn't take long to sexually abuse someone. And then you think, well, what about the porter that is pushing the bed into the lift? Is anyone with them? They've got to double down on who is with whom. And that if it has to be, I think, mandatory, there has to be a chaperone if somebody is under 18 or even under 16. I think there has to be. Well, under 16, yes, consent is, but I think there has to be. It's no point saying, oh, we've got robust safeguarding, because these people are not, they need to have people with them that are healthy, people that are watching what's going on.
Well, it's a terrible problem because the NHS is, well, where does it get its present staff needs from? I mean, you're creating a massive extra layer here.
Yeah.
That's going to take a lot of money out of the NHS. They're 8 years behind on operations now. Is there no other method that you could...
I can't think of any, because I can't think of any other than mandatory chaperoning, because you see, Miles Bradbury refused to let a parent, now a parent could do it. A parent could be there, but Miles Bradbury's excuse was, oh no, the parent would be in the way. They'd be a distraction. Yeah, they would be. You're dead right there. But why can't the parent? Children under 16 should have a parent. But then you could have another situation where it could be an abusing parent. So that could get in the way of an investigation. You know what I mean? It is very difficult. You're not going to be able to capture all the cases all the time, but something has to happen.
Well, in Spain here, I suppose they've got a good idea, because if you're going to go to a physiotherapist, a lot of them are private because the private treatment is relatively cheap here.
Yeah.
They give you a big sheet, and on the sheet says, well, for this procedure, we insist on a parent being there, or the husband being there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is difficult if you did have the situations where you have been in there. Say it was me, I'd been harmed, and say, my harm is caused by domestic abuse, and I have to be examined, and my husband has to be there. Well, how are they going to get the truth out of me? So it is a very difficult one, very difficult one. I know they used to do, if it was like pregnancy and people who are pregnant, they used to say, when you go and do your wee sample, there's a felt tip pen there, just put the permanent marker on the bottom of your bottle and put your name on it, and we will know that you are suffering domestic abuse. So there could be ways around it. You're never going to catch them all, but and I'm not saying for every single person, but I do think with children particularly, someone needs to be present. Because it would have been difficult for Miles Bradbury, because you have to position children to get those actual photographs, and it would have been difficult for him had there been a chaperone there. And that chaperone has to stay, because if it's mandatory, they can't be got rid of, like Miles Bradbury pulled rank and said, who's a consultant here?
Well, the Muslim community are very strict on things like this, and they seem to be able to cope with it.
Well, there's abuse in the Muslim community as well, isn't there? I mean,
I was thinking, well, when the wife goes to a medic and she insists it be a woman medic,
oh,
or
right, okay. Right, okay, fine. Yeah. I mean, if people actually put their heads together and use a little bit of creative thought, there would be a way around it. There has to be, because this is outrageous. And you know, he only got caught because a parent was handing a laptop or something, wasn't it? A
Yeah,
laptop
that's
or an
right.
iPad or something.
Mm.
And then they looked at all of his stuff and he had it everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, but he's only got 8 years. And
Well, somebody that's got longer than 8 years, in fact, 17 years, North Wales, Neil Foden, headmaster. My goodness me, and it went on for years. And what's come out of this court case is that he was christened by the judge as an arrogant person,
yeah,
as a bully.
yes.
Now, this is what so many of them are, aren't they?
Well, they are. He was a depraved paedophile. Well, they all are, whether they've done 1 or 100, but he's classic. It reminded me so much of my own situation with the head teacher I work with. He was talking about this guy, but the comparisons are the same. This guy, very much respected, very well thought of. They put themselves, they portray that sort of attitude. And look at me, you know, very difficult to cross him. Same in my case. Charismatic, yeah, same in my case. There were concerns from members of staff. He was a bully because, and you know, that's, you know, they are very controlling. And then when members of staff did show concerns, nobody did anything about it. And that's why we need mandatory reporting. Because had we had mandatory reporting, if that had come into being, and this had come up, because this guy was arrested in situ last December. He was arrested doing the job. It's not like he's been, you know, playing golf for the last 20 years and now someone's jumped up and said. He was in post only a short time ago. So that is, you know, with mandatory reporting, given that he was still in post, then those people who did not follow through the concerns would now be facing against the law and criminal action. So they should. And the people wouldn't have done anything about it because he was so arrogant. He was so bullish, you know, that people, oh, who's the one that's going to make the report? I'm not doing it. You know what he gets like? And they do get like it when crossed. When crossed, you suddenly see the wrong end of the crocodile.
Yeah.
And that's part of their bewildering charm. But until people start stepping up and realizing that, so we're looking at education and medical situation, 2 massive organizations, yeah? And there's everywhere. It will be everywhere. And people have got to stop running for the hills and go, no, I don't like the sound of this. Somebody said to me the other day that their friend had seen one of my things I've done with you in the past and said, oh, yeah, oh, talking about all this stuff makes me feel sick. Makes everybody feel sick. But you've got to grab a spine and say, what about you feeling sick? You're aged 40. What about the child of 4?
Yeah.
You know, you grow up. You know, it's awful. But it's awful how people completely negate their responsibility.
Well, it's not going to be helped when the Labour Party get back in.
Oh,
Jonathan Ashworth is, well, I don't know what GB News are up to. They're supposed to be right wing. He's on every 2 minutes.
yes, I don't like him.
Why has he got his history? There's the lovely Bridget Phillipson as well. And they're in denial after all the Cass report. Everybody seemed to be on side. Oh, yes, we should have picked this up. A lot of hypocrisy there, of course. They picked it up. But when you want to win an election, you say everything. But these clowns aren't. They still can't identify a woman.
No.
But neither of them. And I mean, he was face down, wasn't he? The other day, dear Jonathan, who are you going to let into a female toilet?
And he
couldn't answer it.
I'm sure I'm going to be blocked from Twitter, you know, from X, because when I saw that, I actually did put out, look, if you've got a penis, then you're a male, whatever you identify as, unless you've had it taken off and it's removed, then you go to a gent's toilet. You know, but I mean, and it's just remarkable that they still can't nail that one, that you have no right in any female area if you have a working penis. And I tagged in J.K. Rowling as well, because she's, I mean, you have not transitioned if you still have all your parts. If I kept my boobs and my vagina and I said, oh, I'm a man now. No. I am a woman dressed up as a man, and I'm saying I'm a man, but I'm not, because my body shape and my parts declares I'm a woman. What is wrong with these people? I really worry about if Labour get in, because there's Wes Streeting, he's going to be supporting Stonewall. You can just feel it happening.
Yeah.
And all those things that were put in place about the, not talking about transgender to young children. I have a horrible feeling, because he was saying all the transgender stuff is outdated. It's not outdated. It's just got too woke.
Yes, and getting on with that theme, let's go to Sadiq Khan heading up again the Pride of London. Now, we've mentioned numerous times about a month of rainbow. Everybody else gets a day if they're lucky. They get a month. And there's Sadiq announcing at the same time, by the way, that he's going to do a Welsh. And everybody in London's got to drive at 20 miles an hour. I mean, what is the matter with the fella? But there again.
But he's also said taxi drivers can't have the England flag on there.
Exactly. Oh, that can't happen.
And the black cab drivers are up in arms saying, well, where's it any different with having it all on lorries and vans and things going round? So, I mean, he is an absolute idiot. I mean, if you are gay, just get on with it. Why do we have to have a march? Why do we have to have a festival?
It's madness that they have got what they wanted. What are you going on about it for?
Well, exactly. Just to me, it winds me up more when I told you the other day about the little girl, a friend of mine's little girl, who in their primary school, they were all encouraged to go to the LBGT festival that was on just down the road from them in Northamptonshire. And I just think, why?
Apparently there were 150,000 mega march it was, plus the media accompaniments this last weekend. And, well, what does one say? I'll tell you what GB News says now. There are quite a few homosexual presenters on there.
Right.
Don't ask me why. There are. And they're very funny and very capable. But even they now are saying what I've just said. We've got what we wanted. Now you're just doing damage.
Well, that's interesting they said that, because my friend's son is gay. He's a very big musician, a very professional musician in large orchestra in London. And he says all this LGBT stuff and transition stuff is actually backfiring merrily onto the homosexuals, because he said people are assuming wrongly that we are transitioned and we are a bunch of weirdos, and we're not. We're gay. And he said that it's caused a lot of issues for that sector of society, because people just don't, they just think, oh, we're all LGBT, blah, 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 blah. And I just happen to be a gay man, that's it. But he said, people are being attacked. Gay men are being attacked because of LGBTQ, and it's not right. You can't lump it all together.
I've just watched a program actually on with some Vox Pops on that were small interviews taken on the hoof from that march, and people were asked questions, and the replies were generally, oh, well, this sort of march does no harm. I question that.
I would question that. I would question that, because
lots of young kids watch it and are drawn in, and they see sadomasochism acted out. They see appalling things acted out. It does harm. Next comment was, we don't see anything like this in America. Nothing of this size or nothing of this going on. And now we think America leads the way.
I was just going to say, that's interesting, because America's supposed to lead the way. I was just going to say that. But I mean, you can't put LGBT stuff up there with something like Notting Hill Carnival. I mean, that's just a different thing altogether. But when I saw Sadiq Khan there in the front row there, waving the flag, I thought, oh, mate, what are you doing? Truly,
Yeah,
what are you doing?
he gets everything wrong, doesn't he? There you go. Another comment from the march. We are just like any other person. Sorry, you're not. You're in a tiny minority. If you want to behave like that, get on with it, but don't entrap other people and
Exactly.
don't advertise your wares.
Absolutely. We have laws here where you can't be homophobic. Fine. So go and live your life. If someone is homophobically inclined towards you, then you report them. And like any other hate crime, they can be arrested. We don't need to keep going out and celebrating it. Fine. When it became legal that you could, fine. But we don't need to keep on going on about it. I mean, and as for taking primary school children, I mean, this girl is 8. And then she said, her father said, all the kids were coming home, age 7 and 8, going, oh, can we have a rainbow flag, Daddy? Can we have a rainbow this? It's ruined the beauty of a rainbow.
Indeed. I've got a final comment for you. Queers for Palestine.
What?
Those were flags and hoardings and A-boards, and they were wandering around. Queers in favour of Palestinians, obviously.
I didn't
The
see
same thing went
anybody.
on at Glastonbury. Again, the woke intelligentsia there. That's nothing to do with it.
But why? I didn't think anyone. I thought that the name queer went out a long time ago.
Oh, no, it's in fashion again.
Oh, it's in fashion again, is it now? Right. I'll tell you, talking about Glastonbury, what I thought, and changing the subject, but I thought it was outrageous, Banksy's thing of a rubber dinghy filled with a whole load of fake migrants being, did you see this, being crowd surfed through the crowd? I just thought that is really not right.
No, it's sad. And don't forget the BBC were pushing the festival. I actually watched the Coldplay performance. And it was brilliant.
Was it? Yeah.
It was good, but it was ruined by the BBC continually pushing the gay theme. This year we've got something new. It's a lesbian compound. Look at them all.
A lesbian compound. Isn't that discrimination? I mean, that is just, can't they be trusted to be with other people?
Well, I don't know. Nigel, of course, in the speech this weekend has said he's going to have them. He's going to take away the funding. Well done, Nigel.
Well, they're all out today, aren't they? All over the place for the final push, as they say. I mean, really interesting that even some of the Labour people are saying, you know, there's still 4 days to go, but the Tories could just nip in ahead of us.
Anything can happen.
Well, it is till the fat lady sings. You don't know, do you? But you know, you don't, because there are so many people. I mean, truly, so many people who don't know which way to vote.
And if they don't vote, then they're not going to get anything. And I can understand.
Well, I saw a thing the other day that said they reckon where normally in a general election there'd be 80% turnout, that they're only expecting 60%.
Unless
I just think, which I think is wrong actually, because you shouldn't have that apathy of going, oh, I don't really care. You should care. And even if you mess up your ballot paper, you should still go out and vote. I think I'm very passionate about people should be voting, because so many people around the world can't vote, and you know, we give their ITs to be able to vote, and you can't complain if you haven't voted. You can't complain.
Indeed. We've mentioned in a number of our previous broadcasts about VAT on private education. This could get very interesting because a clever lawyer has dug up the following fact. It's discrimination.
Absolutely it is.
And he doesn't think Sir Keir will get away with it.
No, I agree. Is it human rights law or something they could get him on? Is that
right? On ECHR law.
ECHR, exactly.
Yeah, you're giving a distinct advantage to a state school because they don't have to pay anything.
Exactly right. But you see, also though, they did say, I heard him arguing this point about, it must be about a month ago now, And I think it was Rachel Reeves that was arguing it, that is perfectly possible for the schools to swallow up that 20% themselves and not charge the parents, that they just need to be more creative. But they're strapped for cash as much as anybody else, really, because a lot of these fee-paying schools are in such amazing mansion houses, aren't they, that need an enormous amount of upkeep and all the grounds. So it's going to be very interesting. But they reckon there is already, I think I read in the weekend news, 40,000 children that are not going to be going to independent schools that were expected to go. There's 40,000 of them. Well, where are they going to be swallowed up from in the state system?
Yeah, they reckon at least 10,000 will be need swallowing up. The rest can go and afford it, they reckon. Well, let's see what happens. I tell you what, we've had quite a reaction from the item last week about plastic bits.
Oh,
Tiny plastic bits. And people want some more information. So we've got it together.
okay.
Now, you're getting poisoned, we have found out, to reiterate what we said last week, because when they're doing autopsies, they've found, with, as an example, heart attack patients in the blood clots, there's lots of shards of plastic, and it's contributing to it. 4.5 times more likely to die if this accumulates. Now, before we go into this and how to avoid it, the thing is, it's cumulative. It has to go on for years and years. The body is very clever, and it gets rid of antibodies, literally, in many shapes and forms. And this is certainly anti the body. And it comes out through sweating, through the usual performances that we naturally perform. It comes out lots of ways, all the baddies. But how does it get in there in the first place? Well, number one culprit is plastic water bottles.
Yeah.
Get the stuff out of a tap. It's probably fresher. But people like their plastic water bottles, but make sure it's the decent types. But even they can give you shards. It comes in through food, especially ultra-processed food.
Yeah.
The chief villain at the moment. It can come in through clothes, through the skin, apparently. But there again, you know, some of these clever materials they're producing these days, and it can come in through personal healthcare products.
Oh, well, yes. I mean, some of those, some deodorants are, some female deodorants, because this goes back to a friend of mine who had breast cancer 4 years ago, and her doctor said, don't use roll-ons and sprays, use pure aloe vera deodorant, because it gets into the lymph nodes and all of that. And he has seen many breast cancers have got, you know, is it aluminium or something, I think, with that? And there's something to do with deodorants. But the other thing, now, a friend of mine is a chief composter, right? And she said it's also, and she told me last week, it's also present in some tea bags. And she said that what happens is, so we are drinking the tea, that the tea bags have been in the hot water, but then we put the tea bags in the compost bin, yeah, and then the compost is all made up and put into, fertilized into the ground, and the insects and the birds, and by now it's really micro, but a bird's guts are micro, aren't they? And it gets into the system of wildlife, which is extraordinary. It's just not all tea bags, but I don't know which ones it is and isn't. But she said the plastics are finitely in tea bags, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, take care of your digestive system. There are certain foods that actually don't get assimilated, like green bananas and carrots. Some of the good stuff, minerals, get assimilated, but others help your digestive tract carry things through to their conclusion. So it's always a good idea to have roughage. So take care of your roughage, in other words. A good bit of roughage does you good. The other thing is that they found these wretched tiny fragments in practically everything. You can start with testicles. I know that doesn't bother you very much, but I mean, it gathers there, believe it or not. It also is in mother's breast milk. You can understand that. And it gets in the parts you would never believe. Blood, of course, that's normal. Anything that would attract like glands, they sort of build up this rubbish. But what can you do to get rid of it? Well, there are certain things apparently you can do. You can get charcoal, detoxing charcoal, and that carries it through the system. Watercress apparently is very good.
Very good for your blood.
Yes, dandelion tea is good. Green tea is good. But what to avoid is junk food and booze, because that just clogs it up even worse. So you can't enjoy yourself these days.
Well, I will pass on the red wine one, or the white one. I'm not giving that up.
You have your limits.
But it's the same. It's the same with when people that take. I'm sure this is something that came out years ago. If you take the contraceptive pill, and that goes in your, it comes out in your wee. That goes through the water cleansing and all that. And there's a lot of people who are drinking. Oh, I think we have got clean water here to drink, but some people say it actually does go into the water system, and then you might not be as fertile as you thought you were. So, I mean, I don't know, what do we do? I mean, go on to live in the dark side of the moon.
That's another alternative. I forgot to mention that one. You can go OTT with a lot of these remedies. The body, I repeat, is very, very clever. So look after yourself.
Well, and
drink water before you say it, because
I actually like. I know this. It's going to laugh at this. I like burnt food, right? I like burnt bacon. I like sausages that are
There's nothing worse than burnt bacon.
I love it. And I like sort of burnt toast, or, I like, if you have fried potato, I like it all burnt on the bottom. Now, someone said to me that's carcinogenic. I thought that is like charcoal and therefore was good for you.
Not really. There are certain things that fats at certain temperatures do produce carcinogenic stuff. But there again, I've been on this wretched diet now for 4 years. It seems to be doing me good. But there is this saying that I've come to the conclusion: if it tastes like cardboard, it's good for you. If it tastes delicious, it's bad for you. Yeah. So it's dead easy to sort out what is good and bad.
Everything in moderation.
Well, there you go. Right, I'm going to go on to Disney. And of course, this is the woke capital of the world. And boy, is it letting the world down, because it lets the kids down. And diversity, inclusivity, and equity have reached different standards like you wouldn't believe. It's already bitten them, and Disney films are not getting watched. It's like the BBC. They artificially put anything that is gay, anything that is ultimate in liberal thought on the films, and it's quite out of context. Can I tell you that there's a new script, let's call it, come out to if you want employment at Disney? And we found out actually that 35% of the writers and directors in Disney are openly gay. 35% of them. Now, why, I wonder? Because they are chosen, of course. What else would you believe? Now, the interviewing procedure to be an employee at Disney is wonderful. They have a big list of questions you can ask and you can't ask. Now, imagine you're sitting down there and seeing this wonderful new composer or writer or film star even, and they look $1 million, just the job. Well, no. They are stopped, the interviewers, from mentioning the following, and I'll read the list. First of all, you must not mention anything about race, colour, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, military or veteran status. What's that about? But there you go, it's in there, military and veteran status. You can't mention age and disability. Well, hang on. The first question is, give me a date of birth, not what age you are. Give me a date of birth, surely. And you can cope with the physicality of this particular job. You can't ask that question.
Now, that is just going one stage too far, because at the end of the day, they're going to need your date of birth if they do employ you. I mean, you can't now on application forms here in England, you can't ask someone's age. You can, and I do object to what is your. Now, where was I the other day? I had to. Oh, it was social services rang me about Roger and his, Parkinson's and everything, and asked me what my ethnicity was, and I said, well, what's that got to do with anything? I mean, that is, I mean, if you're going to do a census, then do a census, but what difference does that make to me? But I would think with the creative arts, to be fair, you do get a lot of gay people are very creative. There's something they are, without a doubt. They've got a real skill with design and artwork. I think, oh, let me just tell you something, as we're talking about arts and things, and you're going to love this one, the BBC, right? A guy called Eric Gill has he was a sculptor, wasn't he? And then it turned out that he actually was a paedophile. So when people knew that he was a paedophile, but is, renowned for his artistic prowess and everything, for his sculptures, the sculpting thing model got damaged. So there's a sum total now with the Freedom of Information Act. I was contacted by the Daily Mail on Saturday to ask for a comment. The sum total of the repair to this has gone up to, and it's the City of Westminster, has gone up to £300,000 to repair this and make sure it can't be damaged again. I said, if you think people aren't going to damage it, people will be outraged. I mean, BBC of all people, doesn't that say something? After Rolf Harris, after Jimmy Savile, after Stuart, whatever his name is, all the different people that have been there, that they badly never supported the victims, and there they are saluting this monument of a paedophile. And what message does that say to anybody else who's been harmed by abuse, whether it's by Eric Gill or not, about how the BBC treat it? How can you revere somebody like that? We had to smash down anything to do with Rolf Harris. We had to completely rip down Jimmy Savile's grave. Why do they have to be different? 300,000.
It's art. It's art.
Well, it's not art, is it? You say it doesn't matter what he was doing, but I do think that gets away from, obviously completely away from gay people, but I do think gay people have they are, I think, quite creative, more than maybe some of us are.
Well, everything's in proportion. Let's have a look at something else apart from this. Oh no, I'm going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has come to my mind, of course, that we were going to be commissioned for, during the pandemic, a program about flowers. And I had to fill in all the 38 pages, and I got to page 38, which was the great one. And it said, if you're going to get any money from us for commissioning, you've got to make sure that every ethnic minority, every disabled person, everybody you can think of, in inverted commas, disadvantaged person, will have to take part in the program. And of course, I told them, I'm sorry, there's no person that I can put in this part that's a black. Oh, I've got to be careful here. Hang on. What? No, I haven't. I'll say it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, but I can't find any black left-handed. No, I've got this wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't find any black lesbian women in a wheelchair.
Transgendered.
Yeah, well, I didn't get into that far, but it's madness. I'm sorry, you get the right person for the right job, don't you?
That's exactly right. It's just ridiculous, and it shows up so much. Like when you look at adverts and things like that, you go, "Oh, there's the token black person, there's the token disabled person," and it's screamingly obvious. It really is, and I'm not, being nasty or whatever, but they make it so obvious that it's actually laughable, because it's so deliberate, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's in your face. Something else that's in our face, which is terrible. There's a boy aged 12. Apparently, he was investigated by officers of Her Majesty's Police Force because he had a toy crossbow. Now, it goes a bit deeper than that, because apparently, do you know about this story?
No,
Oh, I thought it was one you sent me, kid.
no.
Prevention officer, and he made a complaint that he wasn't, this 12-year-old said, I'm not pro-Hamas. And they sent round the prevention officers because of hate speech, of course. And they tried to get him up because he had a toy plastic crossbow. When he went to one of the heritage sites, you can buy these for about £4 or £5, and they're, you know, the little child. Have you not come across it?
No.
We won't cover it. I'll look into it again, kid.
Yeah, no, I don't know that one.
No, all right.
I do know about 9 and 10-year-olds being searched for knives,
Oh, yes.
and they should be doing that because
Yes. They planted half of them.
yeah.
Right, I'll move on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sadly, we go on to Jay Slater, the boy, 19-year-old, missing from the Canary Islands there. Spain is a very mountainous place. We've got a peak near where we live here, and it's 14,000 odd feet. That's higher than anything else in Europe, but they've got an even bigger one on the Canary Islands. And the terrain is horrendous. And when they compared it with the Greek problem,
Yes.
which was very bare countryside, this one isn't. We live in the Sierras, in the mountains here, and it stays green, bushy all year, because bushes last a lot longer than the grass. The grass dies, but the bushes are there, so you can easily lose somebody. But there's a lot of mystery going on here, a lot of criticism of the Spanish police. Well, let me tell you, there's more police in Spain than the rest of Europe put together. So we're not short of police. But they do things very differently, mainly not as kindly as we are in the United Kingdom. We don't have officers that specifically look after accidents when you're run over. The police provide this in Britain, and it's a great help. And in circumstances like this. But you've got a problem here, nevertheless. There are two things. First of all, plenty of police, and nothing's been found. There are lots of things that are not being said. Did this guy have friends or acquaintances that he met on the island? Because there's an awful lot of drug problems on the islands, on the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
He befriends somebody of the wrong type.
Well, I mean, you don't go to a festival and then, I just think it's so odd that you go to a festival and you just go off, first time away from home on a holiday, and he goes off with two men he didn't know and gets in a car and travels away. Now, where the phone pinged, no one's ever said that they found the phone, have they? But maybe that's lost in the undergrowth somewhere. But, you know, a friend, I mean, I don't know the terrain, I've not been there, but a friend said that they could hear him slipping on the gravel, and they were laughing about, oh, look where I am. Well, wherever that was. And of course, his friend said, put your location services on and get a taxi, for goodness sake, it's 15 minutes away. And this is in broad daylight. So whatever happened to him? Has he gone down a ravine somewhere? I mean, what I think is outrageous is, but as you said earlier, it's all to do with, you know, Spanish arrogance, if you like, that, you know, the British police offered to come and help because there's anything they could do to help, because he, after all, he was a British citizen. And no, they
I turned that round. Would the British police let the Spanish police come in if one of their citizens?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know. Probably not. But when you look at the back of, what happened with Maddie McCann, And the old manana with the Portuguese police, they're not quick off the mark, are they? And yet then what got me was they were asking, you say yourself, it's a very dangerous terrain. Did he have the right walking shoes on? Hardly likely if you'd gone to a festival. Probably had ordinary trainers on. You haven't got hiking boots on. And yet they're asking untrained volunteers to go and help the police over the weekend. So why didn't they ask the British police to come in and say, look, this is a boy's life here, one of our citizens?
Well, they came across a big juggernaut while it was down there. When they asked for volunteers, there were volunteers. And they ran across the famous Spanish bureaucracy, which is horrendous, still is. And they were required to prove who they were, fill in this form, wait for that form. And the British people eventually said, blankety blank,
yeah, exactly.
I'm off, and they walked down.
Yeah, you either want help or you don't. You're not going to have. Time is not on your side. No. But it is. I was in the on my news feed today. They were saying that he's about the 4th or 5th person that's gone missing on Tenerife over the years. Yeah. Male, and it's very odd.
The other thing, of course, is that it's surmised that if he went up the top of the mountain to get his bearing, which is quite a natural thing to do, he'd have seen the sea, which was 19 miles away. And he could have headed that way because you either turn right or left. There's villages everywhere on the coast. But 19 miles in that terrain is equivalent to 90 miles on the flat.
Yes, but what is also odd, I suppose you could say maybe he had drunk a lot, maybe he'd also taken drugs, maybe he wasn't thinking clearly, but he knew his phone was out of power only had 1% left. Why didn't he charge it before he left the people? Why didn't he take a water bottle filled or something? There's something that to me it just doesn't pin together. It brings up, I think, more questions than there is answers.
It does, and I'm going to read something now, which is going to take about a minute or so. I crave for your patience, but I think this says much about Britain, the state we're in, especially the NHS. And so be a bit patient, and I'm going to put a nice photograph up. And it will give you some time to contemplate what is really behind this. And it is very sad. That's a picture of part of Plymouth, by the way.
Right.
So we're going to go into politics on this one, but we're going to humanize it. Well, I've always voted Conservative, though I think it's a waste of time. An 84-year-old man tending a fine display of roses said in Plymouth. He was bleeding profusely from a small cut on his forearm because he is on blood thinners and had to use a frame to rise to his feet. But his demeanour bespoke a man determined to carry on whatever the difficulties. I think it's the worst government we've had in power for many years, he said. My wife died 2.5 years ago. She was badly disabled, and it ended up I couldn't even get her out of bed in the morning. Not a sausage of help from the NHS. The district nurse came every other day. It should have been every day. Then my wife had to go into hospital. There was no more the hospital could do for her. She was desperate to come home, and he promised to get her home. A young physiotherapist told him he could not do this, as he was unable to look after her. He was infuriated by this edict. I thought it was disgusting, and told the physiotherapist, well, I've done it for 20 or 30 years. Well, you're in your 80s, the physiotherapist said. I'll stop you. I'll put an order on you. I'm going to bring her home, he replied. My wife had bad legs, but was ready at 9:30 in the morning, all dressed and in her wheelchair. and her hopes rose every time somebody entered the ward who looked as if she might have the authority to discharge her. Yet she was not allowed to leave until 9:30 in the evening, when she was sent home in an ambulance. By the time she got home, she was absolutely traumatized. "You must not let them take me back into hospital," she said. "I'll never go back into hospital." In the end, she died at home, as she wished. Her husband considers that immigration is one reason why the NHS is overburdened. "I've gone through quite a few prime ministers in my time," he said. "The promise was that we'll look after you from cradle to grave." Despite his disgust with the present government, he has already cast a postal vote for the Conservatives. We've got Johnny Mercer. He's a great MP. He's good with the veterans. I've come across 2 or 3 instances very similar to this, where the old people are treated disgracefully.
It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening, isn't it? It's like, you know, once you're past 70, we won't operate on you. We'll let you rot in a corridor somewhere. It's outrageous. You've got people who should be cared for, looking after the people who should be cared for, and you can't. There's no future in that at all. That's in a way why I like Ed Davey. I did like Ed Davey. It was a very moving interview with him, that he had nursed his mother when she was very, very ill. When he was very young. Then his wife's now got multiple sclerosis. He's got his child who's disabled, and he is very much in favour of the care system being, reviewed. I think it's. I know for sure on Thursday I shall still go to the polling booth thinking, where do I put it? But something has to change. It's terrible. I mean, because people are living longer, and there's going to be more elderly people around. So you've got to do something about it. I mean, he says he blames immigration, but how many of the nurses and doctors are actually from overseas? So if we didn't have them, we'd have even less people. You know, how many cleaners in the hospitals, you see them in the supermarkets now, are from overseas. And none of us lot that here don't want to do it. I mean, and until they start paying a decent wage to carers, it is such an important job, and they get so little pay, the basic pay, and it should be a profession, I think, because the way you have to lift people, treat people, hold their hand, be empathic with them, all that stuff, learn to actually feed them when they can't feed themselves. It's a profession. It's not just a carer. It's more than that.
Well, we're going to cheer you up before we go. We got to go. And there's a big competition going on between France and Spain at the moment. It's not the Tour de France. It's actually who visits that country. The leaders in the world, apparently, are France. Nearly 100 million people visit France.
Wow.
Second, Spain, 80 million. But
Great.
Spain is closing that gap very, very rapidly because of a number of reasons. One is that France is blooming expensive to eat out, to park your caravan, to go in a hotel, compared with Spain. So people are having second thoughts. Because France has got fantastic history, but so has Spain. Practically every capital of any province in Spain is a wonderland for historicals. And the cuisine is not half catching up with French cuisine. Now, we are spoiled because we also live in the northeast, which is near the French border of Catalonia, or Catalonia for the non-Catalans, because you've got the mixture of the best of French, the best of Spanish cuisine. And you've got more starred Michelin restaurants up there than you can shake a stick at. So that's nice. People are coming here to be fed, and at prices very realistic.
Yeah, but you don't want us there. You don't want people, do you, on your beaches? You don't want the Brits there. They're marching up and down because we're coming in to enjoy all this stuff in Spain.
And they are living to regret it. I'll give you an anecdotal here. They're particularly anti-British in Palma de Mallorca, and Mallorca in general. their holiday season is a disaster, and all the restaurateurs are going berserk.
All right.
Not in my backyard is. It's not working. It'll be a disaster. Spain is reliant
on
its tourist industry, so it will change. I'll tell you who's never changed: Benidorm. They've not gone down this, and yeah, I saw that look. I'll tell you what I did before visiting Benidorm. It's famous for being the Blackpool of Spain. It's 1,000,000 miles away from Blackpool. It really is very nice, and they've looked after it. But I wouldn't go there for a holiday. It's not my holiday town.
It's not my type.
But for people that, you know, it's good and clean and it's cheap. And if you go there in January, February, you get decent temperatures even.
Yeah, that's true. I still wouldn't go there.
Spain's catching up. So there you go. We're doing an advert for Spain with the bad and the good. We've covered the bad policeman.
And the ugly.
Yes. And don't get arrested because if you're arrested here, they treat you like the Spanish police. In other words, there's no consensuality. Oh, which is being a nice policeman, a nice plod saying, please don't do that again, else we'll have to feel your collar. No, the uncivilized police here, not all of them, but what they do is get a big baton and they hit you on the back of the calf where you don't bruise quite easily. But I tell you what, it takes you in no time and you get put in a jail cell for 1 or 2 days and it works. Perhaps our policemen can learn from that.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the Portuguese police used to terrify me. They always looked so sort of aggressive and not particularly approachable at all. And, you know, used to terrify you the last day of the month when they're on every single roundabout, you know, and on motorway entrances, checking for vans that didn't have agricultural oil in it.
Well, I tell you something, in all honesty, we found the police here entirely and utterly helpful. Now,
I think maybe it's just the way they stand, that they just look aggressive, but they're probably not.
Well, and the guns don't help, of course.
No, exactly.
And the big machine guns don't help, of course. But I, in my position, journalistic position, have a lot to do with the police. And they are very helpful and they talk to you very nicely. But if you're a baddie, I'm sorry, you're not treated the same. Nor should you be.
Nor should you be. No, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And, you know, I wonder how the Germans are getting on with all the football fans, you know.
Yes, and our football fans, there you are. You see, they've come out with smelling roses, haven't they?
Gareth says, yes. Did they deserve a win?
No, of course
they were lucky. They were lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, we live in hope for next weekend, and let's hope we can turn.
I'm not holding my breath.
No, that's good. Well, we covered some subjects there, young lady, and we'll see you next week.
Now,
I've got to say before we go that you've had a family round, your family from Bermuda. It's been the only decent week of weather. That was last week. And it's gone rotten cold again. They're off to Bermuda, suffering the delights of the Atlantic Ocean. So you get an all year round climate there, truly you do, and it never gets too hot.
So they obviously towed the sun when they landed. It's sort of like placed it in the sky as they landed. And as they've now left, they've obviously taken it back with them because it's grey and cold now because they literally, they took off an hour ago.
Oh, there you go. But finally, there's no such place as heaven, is there? Because they've got their problems over there. We have
of course they do. Everybody has. That's the point. Wherever you go, you can go on holiday, but when you ever stay anywhere and you're there to live, there's always frustrations of bureaucracy and things not working and slow tempo of getting people to mend things. It's everywhere you go.
That's right. But one thing stays the same, and that's the England football team. And there we'll leave it. See you next week. Bye-bye.